you all for coming, and thank you for making the long journey from one building over to the other. My name is Kate Coyer. I'm the director of the Civil Society and Technology Project at the Center for Media Data and Society at the School of Public Policy here at CU. And thank you, Ava, for asking me to do this, and for SPP for organizing the talk. Very pleased to welcome Tim, who's here with us, who's been a Center Fellow for the last couple of months and is here just for another month or so with us. So,
end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you've got things that you want to follow up on him with all the different work that he's involved in, please do check with him afterwards. Currently also a doctoral student at the Annenberg School for Communication at the University of Pennsylvania. Has a long history as a digital rights activist and a software developer. And also, his research, not only what he's talking about here, but broadly examines a range of issues related to online privacy and web browsing. And I asked Tim's permission for this beforehand, but my favorite story has to do with just this last fall with the project that some of you might be familiar with that we've been organizing to help provide Wi-Fi and mobile phone charging for refugees when they were trapped at Keleti Station and transiting through the station. When I first had this idea, one of the first people I went to was Tim. I think it was he and Dana's first or second.
It was within 48 hours of entering the country.
In 48 hours of entering the country, still in a state of jet lag, but you gave us particularly the best advice, which was to keep it simple. And so instead of trying to create really complicated things, to just go to the store and buy some stuff off the shelf, and we were able to get things up and running the next day. And the name of the actual Wi-Fi network that we used, instead of just free Wi-Fi or open Wi-Fi, that it became free Wi-Fi, please no YouTube. And I mention those. It's simple, but it's genius. And because you want to convey that this is part of the commons, that there's not enough bandwidth, and there's not enough money to support data for everybody to watch videos or engage with the internet the way we might if we were at home. But how do you express something about share the commons, use just what you need so that everybody can use something? And it was very simply, and I think eloquently put just by titling the actual Wi-Fi network that. And the reason I'm sharing those two anecdotes, not just to talk about this project that we've been doing, but because I think it really ties in with a lot of your approach to research and your approach to activism, and the ways in which keeping something simple and straightforward, yet actually having some really profound impacts on how we understand things and what the consequences of all this is for the future of our privacy online and really the future of how we communicate online. So leave it over to you. Thank you for doing this talk.
And thank you for the very generous and nice introduction. Okay. So today I'm going to talk to you, as the poster said, about web tracking with Chinese characteristics. This work is the result of a collaboration. Only half the team is here. I'm Tim Liebert. My background is more hacker, digital methodologist. I'm fluent in many computer languages. My collaborator, Bo Mai, is a China expert. He does qualitative investigation. He's fluent in several human languages. He's not here today. And so both of us are privacy researchers, and when we combine our different fluencies, we were able to work on a pretty interesting project together, which is what I want to talk to you about today. So the talk's going to have a few parts. The overarching question here is, how is the Chinese government, and by government we mean the central government in Beijing, to be clear, involved in web surveillance? So first we're going to look at three theoretical models of internet control, like possible explanations. We're going to look at the technology of web surveillance, so take it out of the abstract into a much more practical sense. Talk about the research methods we used, our findings, and if we have time permitting, I'm going to embarrass a major corporation. So, theoretical models. A lot of this is Bo's work. He came up with these great titles, which are the omnipotent watchtower, the obedient watchdog, and the political economic model. So the omnipotent watchtower is what is most commonly shown in the West, right? It's this idea that you have this authoritarian government in China located in Beijing. It rules this whole huge country of over 1 billion people with an iron fist, unified policies, efficiently implemented. And this is quite a lot what you'll see in the Western depiction of China in the newspaper or whatever. It's like the Chinese do X, the Chinese do Y. So another kind of model, which is a little bit more accurate when you get deeper into the literature, is the obedient watchdog. So in this model, what you have is you have internet companies have to get a license from the government to operate. You're not allowed to have a website, you're not allowed to do e-commerce unless the government is okay with it. And so what happens is because you need this license, you have to please your master, you have to please the government, and you end up kind of doing the work of government in the sense that the companies are doing the censorship. They have actual people on staff and getting paid by the hour to do, carry out a government task. And another kind of very common idea here, especially seen in the Western media, is that these companies are involved in this largely against their will. They would just love to be Silicon Valley, super free, doing Web 7.0 stuff, but they've got the government forcing them to do this horrible stuff. So we think there's kind of a third model that explains it better, and that's kind of if you look at the political economic relationships, also where's the money. So in this sense, what you have is governments and the companies actually have the same motivation, which is making money online. For the government, consistent economic growth means they have a harmonious society. So the leadership in Beijing is not elected, but if they keep delivering amazing growth year after year, the likelihood that people are going to get very upset is not high. For the companies, they actually have kind of a underexplored benefit from the Great Firewall. So if you're a Facebook competitor, like RenRen or something, one of these local companies, you don't have to compete with Facebook, it's blocked. If you're a Google search competitor, you don't have to compete with Google, it's blocked. So a lot of these companies, it's not just their arms are being twisted, they're part of a system that benefits them. And if you look across kind of the whole globe, one of the very few countries that has really diverse and robust internet sector growth is China. You don't see that in Europe. There aren't a ton of European internet companies, but there's tons of Chinese companies. And the other thing that's really important too is neither of these government or companies are cohesive wholes. There's a lot of different actors. There's different people involved, not just within companies, but between companies, within governments. There's rivalries between different local governments. So while we're kind of presenting, like I said, from a Beijing standpoint, there's a lot of variation, especially as you get at a granular level. Not going to get too much into that today. So, the question: which of these models best applies to the role of government web surveillance in China? So we're going to look at one specific facet. We're going to look at web surveillance, not like all the internet, but surveilling people on web pages. So to do that, we're going to audit all the tracking on the top 500 Chinese websites. We're going to see where all the data flows are, how people are being tracked online. But before we get into deep tracking of people online, we're going to look at the technology. So I'm going to explain this several different ways because it's kind of complicated, and I'm not sure which way is the best, but hopefully we'll get to it. So the nature of web pages. So web pages aren't, they're retrieved over the internet with this thing called hypertext transfer protocol. And each page you get is not like a complete thing like a PDF document or anything like this. It's really kind of like a recipe, right? So what you do is you download source code, and then your browser, this is what the browser does for a living, your browser reads that source code and starts downloading new stuff. So if there's like a picture or a font, a video, what happens is once you have that source code, then your browser starts downloading this new stuff. So there's two types of ways that that new stuff can get to your computer. If it's from a first party, the place you downloaded the source code is the same place you download the image. So if you visit my website, I give you the source code, you download the image, also for me, still the first party, no other interactions. The other thing you can have is third-party requests. So with a third-party request, the picture or video doesn't come from me, it may come from Kate. And the thing is, your browser, because it's busy rendering the page, doesn't stop and say, hey, I'm downloading a picture from Kate's website, is that cool? And it doesn't happen, it just happens automatically. And this is what you want to happen, because you want like a really seamless, good experience. The problem with this is sometimes instead of like a cool picture of Kate's vacation, it may be a sneaky little picture, piece of code that's used to spy on me. In the same way, you don't know that she exists. I'm sorry for casting as the bad guy. So this is a little bit better with pictures. So what we have here is a user, this little guy, tells the web browser, I want this page. What happens is there's the first party server, the first computer, sends back this HTML document. So this is what the person does. At this point, the person is no longer doing anything. So at this point, the page is saying, hey, server, give me stuff. And you get a picture. And again, nothing going on there. And then this keeps happening, but now we're connected to a new server. And this person is no longer doing anything. But you may have 20, 40, 60 servers being contacted without you noticing. I think the most I've ever seen one page do is like 70. I think it was like Huffington Post. Anyway, so this is often called like the hidden web or the invisible web. And the way to think about that, there's kind of the web you look at and the web you see, and there's another web looking right back at you. So for every 2 eyes on one web page, there's probably 10 looking back on the other side. So this is much better to explain with code, and this is also way more fun. So everybody has laptops out. If you don't have your laptop, you can use your mobile or look at your friend's mobile. I'm going to track everybody in real time. It's a lot of fun. And then I'm going to sell that data to Google and Facebook. But if you could go, I don't know, can everybody see the address here? So don't hit enter, just type it in. Everybody ready? Waiting. Good. All right, ready to go? Everybody? All right. So when you download a third-party request, the server that has that element gets the request. So what this is right here, the page you're looking at has a hidden tracker on it. So if you all load the page, I'm going to show you I'm tracking you all. So this is the type of data that someone who has one of these hidden request elements gets. So if I have a bunch of people I'm working with, I can say put my code on your website, and then I'm going to start getting your data. And so you can see what we have here. The first piece is the IP address. And you can tell 193.225.200.92, that's the IP address of this Wi-Fi network in this room. And I know 208.54.86.131 is not in this room. So someone's using a mobile and is not on Wi-Fi, correct? Raise your hand if you're mobile and not on Wi-Fi. All right. Hold on. What type of iPhone do you have? That one? This is Dana, because I know Dana has a newer iPhone than Kate, so I can actually, so this data, companies will tell you, if you look at their privacy policy, they say, we collect anonymous data. As you can tell, I can figure out who in the room this belongs to fairly easily. So it's like anonymous unless you spend 2 seconds asking questions. And they have a lot more data than this. So what you get in here, you get the IP address, that told me something. You have the date, this tells me something too. If you visit a bunch of pages in sequence, I can tell it's probably the same person. I'm going to explain, this is the element you downloaded, it's called tracker. This is the page you came from, and this is a really important thing. Anybody who gets these records gets the address of the page you're currently viewing. That's called a referrer. So the way that people can kind of build a profile of you is they get this data and they pull this out of there and they put that in their database and they say this person's visiting this type of site. This could be something like the weather, sports, or it could be a political organization, it could be an activist website, it could be something like that would get you in trouble or get you arrested. And then in here we have the type of device. So we have an iPhone, we have a bunch of Macs, we have an Android up here. So this is what's telling you the type of device. And again, this helps you narrow it down and who it is. And there's some additional information. The interesting thing here is who has do not track turned on their phone. We've got a couple do not track. Didn't stop me. So there's this value, DNT. And most people, DNT is blank. Some people, DNT is 1. So what happens when you set do not track in your browser, the company gets it. And if I'm a nice company, I say, hey, do not track. I'm OK with that, and I delete the data. If I'm Google, Facebook, or any of the major companies, I say, I don't care, and I keep it. So that's what they do. So this is kind of just a general idea. And so the question that we were trying to get to, I'm going to get back to it in a minute, is these data flows exist on every version of the web you look. So what we're trying to figure out really is how do these types of data flows fit into a model where the government exists someplace. So, yeah, we did that one. Although I like this guy. We did that. So you can look back at the page. This is kind of fun. This is the page I used to track you, and I actually purposely made it possible for you to see that I'm tracking you. What we have to do is look really close. This dot on the page is how you were tracked. And this type of dot, this pixel, you find all over the web. The other thing I should point out is if I had made it blue, you would not have seen it. And you can even make them clear. So those exist all over the place too. Google has a clear one called UTM GIF, which is a clear pixel, and you've probably downloaded it to your computer 20,000 times in the past hour. So what is the data we disclose? We just talked about it. IP, type of computer, et cetera. And when you look at this stuff in a large volume, and we're talking millions and millions, not billions of records, you can use that, just that information there. And again, this is something all the companies say is completely anonymous, and you can figure out who that person is with about 80% accuracy. And what this is because it says the sites you visit. The sites you visit says a lot about who you are. So real quick, summary, when you're loading pages, these third-party connections are happening. The third parties get these requests. They can keep records. They reveal what you're visiting. And if the same company has their code on many sites, then they can start building a portfolio about who you are and what you do. So the question is, who are these third parties? So the research method will tell us how to do it. So what we did to kind of answer our questions, first we came up with a population of websites we wanted to look at. Then we did a census of these HTTP requests, and then we followed the data further, because what we're really trying to do here is not just do like a cool tech trick. We're trying to say, how does this technology really connect to like much bigger currents in the world? So for a population of sites, we took the Alexa top 500 Chinese websites. The reason we chose these wasn't because they're sensitive or not sensitive. We're just saying these are what people are most likely exposed to. This data is confirmed by the China Internet Network Information Center. This is where the Bo can read Chinese part comes in. So what we did is I wrote a open source software tool called WebXray, which is a combination of Python, JavaScript, PhantomJS, and MySQL. If you really want to talk tech, we can do that later. It's open source. If you go to webxray.org, you can get it. And I would love more people to use it. So what we did is we got a server that is based in mainland China because we wanted to make sure our results were accurate. It was kind of a pain in the ass. So what we did is WebXray records the requests for events and also shows if the requests were received. So I can ask for something like, say, a picture of Tiananmen Square, something like this, and if it's blocked, that request never gets answered. It's me saying, hey, give me this, and then the firewall is like, no, right? So I can see if that's happening. So if I had discovered data flows where a bunch of requests were being made, but the responses weren't coming back, that means the government would be actively blocking a surveillance mechanism from transferring data abroad. We don't find that. So better the pictures again. So we have the hidden web. It's not hidden anymore. Basically, the program sits there and just watches everything that happens. No, I'm not going to do the demo. So I'm going to follow the data instead. So what we found is we looked at these, the technical level, I just get network traffic. So we found, for example, there's this domain onquan.org. And what we did is we looked at the business records, the registration records, and we found out that this domain is actually owned by a company called KnownSec. And then what we did after that, and this is where Bo really took over, is there are open government procurement databases where you can actually see what the government has spent money on, because they have like an open bidding system for a lot of contracts. So they're trying to promote certain types of commerce and competition, which is very capitalist, not very communist. But anyways, they have these records out there. And so Bo looked through them. So we found a little bit of data, figured out who owns this thing, and then Bo dove really deep and figured out that this company is selling a web security monitor system to the government. So again, just by looking at these tiny little bits of network traffic, you can start to see a picture of how people are really related to these larger entities. So going back to our kind of 3 theoretical models, we're going to see which of those makes the most sense based on the data. So I actually collected this data in September, so this is very fresh. It's rare I get to present something I collected so recently. Of the 500, we got about 467 to load. The ones that didn't load, a lot of them were banks. Banks are a lot more allergic to the type of web scraping I'm doing, which is good because they're banks. I kind of want that. So the total number of third-party requests that we intercepted from those 467 sites was 26,000 plus. And the percentage of pages that had some type of request was over 90. So 9 in 10 pages, when you visit them, you're not just visiting that page. You're visiting somebody else also, but you probably don't see it. Pages with cookies, won't get too into that, but we found about 2,600 unique cookies. And if you're the type of person who wants a giant database full of cookie strings, I'll give it to you. The average number of domains contacted, this is more interesting, this is 5. So when you're loading a page, on average, there's 5 other servers that you're connected to that you're not seeing. This number, as a side note, is significantly lower than what I've seen in most of the West. So actually, if you're on the Chinese web, while you're still getting tracked by a number of people, that is probably about 1/5 as many trackers as you get if you go to the New York Times webpage. No, actually, wait. New York Times webpage, you get 44. So my math is wrong. 44 on the New York Times versus 5 on an average Chinese website. But that's for another day. So the top level results, majority of the pages are tracked. So this data not only is tracked, it's going to many places at once. And this introduces very high potential for sustained surveillance. So again, where's the government fit in? So we can have direct attributable government surveillance, this is the watchtower. We can have government contractors, kind of contractual agreements, that's the watchdog. And then we can do behind the scenes, which is the political economic model where you have multiple entities doing things for their own benefit, ultimately all doing it to profit, and in the background this comes together. So government attributable. What we would see in this case is that HTTP requests will go to a government domain that connects more than one page. So what we did is we checked for the presence of requests to the domains owned by the government. So this could be ones ending gov.cn, that's an easy one, but we also looked to see, we found like CCTV, Xinhua, these are government media agencies. We didn't think this would be surprising to find this, right? It'd be quite easy for the government to mandate this. Here's an example of where we found one. This is a site for artwork. Obviously not a government website. And if you look under the hood, so if you look here, you can see there is JavaScript being loaded to ebs.gov.cn. So there, the government is, when you load this, the government is getting a request. But who is ebs.cn.gov? Unfortunately, I can't read this, but my understanding is this is a government agency that is essentially there to promote e-commerce, kind of like a Better Business Bureau type thing if you're from the States. This isn't a security service, and a lot of times in China, it's not something that would necessarily hide, like, uh-oh, it looks like it's e-commerce, but it's really the army. I have no reason to believe that's what's happening. If it says it's the e-commerce, that's probably just the e-commerce. So again, yep, it said all this. The other ones we found cctvpic.com. So this is a domain that would host images. So unlike the sneaky 1-pixel image, this probably is just pictures from the news because the state news agency provides a lot of media that everybody uses. The thing about this is it ended up being pretty rare. There's only 4% of sites. So of our 3 kind of what's happening, the first one, the government is directly doing it, it's pretty much off the table. Government contracted surveillance. So, like we had that example before of the companies in the Procurement Database, we actually went really, really deep, and we looked into the data, and we looked into our technical data, and we looked into this Procurement Database, and we tried to figure out who are these companies that are getting data and also contracting with the government. And this was a lot of detective work, and also really shows this is something I don't think any one person can do by themselves, and I really think interdisciplinary work is really exciting for this reason. So here's another example. This is China ComCN. And if you look under the hood on here, you have WebTerran, who we'll talk about in a moment. I also find this really funny. It says display none. It's like explicitly hidden, but I found it. So, anyways, so when we looked deep into that, we actually only found 2 companies, which were KnownSec and WebTerran. And then Bo took this a step further, and he really looked closely at who these companies are and what we can learn about these relationships by looking at the companies. KnownSec is a government contractor, and they primarily do cybersecurity. So stuff like you don't want your website to be hacked, just your normal, you're on the internet running a website, it's a wild place. They have a mix of corporate and government clients. Their website has this very Silicon Valley vibe to it. There's pictures of people at a barbecue. They're all friends. They're hanging out. It looks like a cool place to work. Honestly, I would probably work at KnownSec. They seem like super cool guys. On the flip side, you have WebTerran, who has a completely different type of business. WebTerran analyzes netizen views and discussions concerning social events with a focus on negative opinions. And a lot of the language on WebTerran's website directly mirrors the language of these central government decrees, like the internet should be managed like this, da-da-da-da-da. WebTerran's like, we do exactly this. So their clients are government and state media. The website, in complete opposite to KnownSec, it was really interesting. Very thin on details. They just say we do what the government likes, we have government contractors, and we know what you like, and that's it. But again, only 3% of sites. So we had 3 on each, so we know there's these relationships happening, but this isn't where most of the data is going. So we found a lot of tracking, 92% of sites. Government direct, about 4. Government contractors, 3. So where's the rest of this data going? And that's commercial surveillance. Let me just take a sip. So same thing in China as it is in the West and elsewhere. Dominant model of making money online is advertising, right? You have your e-commerce sites where you're selling stuff, and then you have every other website which is trying to get you to click on a link to an e-commerce site. So what you see is nearly all that tracking we found is commercial. It's for the benefit of seeing what you do so they can sell you something they think you need. And so what we found is we have this really, and I've seen this in every country I've investigated, you have this really, what's called the long tail. You have a few companies that are dominating, they have kind of this long trail going on. Big ones are Baidu, Alibaba, surprise, Google is the third one. So Google's at 36%. I'll talk about Google a little bit more, but Google is supposedly blocked in China, so it's a bit surprising. Let me see, Tencent, Sina, they own Weibo, AllYes, Knet, Media AV, Menlo. These are all Chinese companies. At the bottom, you have Amazon. The reason Amazon is in there primarily is they host content. So in the same way I said one of those government things was just to host images, Amazon's web services business just hosts images and stuff. So that's probably what they're using it for. Again, here's a table. You see Baidu is up there. Baidu's doing quite well. And when I've compared year on year, actually Alibaba, as you'd expect, is doing better year on year. So this type of stuff is not directly linked to the government, but if we look at the slides from the NSA that Edward Snowden showed us, that also didn't reveal a huge government spying infrastructure. It revealed that the government had really cozy relationships with companies that were doing commercial tracking. So I can't say for certain, and we're not making the statement that the government in China is doing the exact same thing the NSA does in the West and leveraging commercial tracking for surveillance, but the only reason they wouldn't is if they were less interested in spying on people than the NSA is, and I think they probably have equal considerations there. So there's really two options. Again, the government's not interested, or there is some sort of secret data exfiltration or sharing system. They may have a different backdoor or a, a twisted arm. Till we get a Chinese Edward Snowden or even somebody from within one of the companies kind of trying to reveal it, we're probably never going to know. But when you're studying black box systems, which most surveillance isn't one of the easiest things to study. A lot of times at the end of a lot of questions I'll have to answer with like, I'm not totally sure. But in this case, we're trying to just narrow things down to about as close as we can get them to. One more thing. So we talked about Google briefly before. This is something this is from New York Times. You're going to see stuff like this quite frequently. China clamps down on web, pinching companies like Google. Poor Google getting pinched. And indeed, this is from our server in Beijing. You can see when we tried to get Gmail, you get this classic connection timed out. Gmail was blocked from our server. And these guys, the head of Google and the head of China, these are not friends, clearly. But most of the traffic was blocked. Google Analytics was something we found, because Google Analytics is anywhere, anytime. So China appears to be totally okay with Google Analytics. It's blocking all the other Google services which could threaten them, but for some reason, Google Analytics is okay. It seems that they benefit the regime. This is something that can easily be blocked. And when Google reorganized as Alphabet, the new Alphabet company, that was blocked in China within 24 hours. So the likelihood that they're blocking, corporate reorg, pointless websites within 24 hours and have accidentally for years let billions of people be spied on by Google Analytics seems unlikely. And again, like I said before, the WebXray software can see, well, maybe these requests were being made, but they weren't coming back, right? Maybe they were getting blocked in there. And they're not. They're definitely not being blocked. I know this factually and conclusively. And again, this is the fact that other services are blocked on that server. Even worse, Google is completely half-assed, and they haven't encrypted these requests. So they make it trivial to read. This is the type of stuff like, if you were taking a college-level course on computer security and you turned in your code, like you would get a C- on the project for just being half-assed and doing it the night before. Except this affects several billions of people rather than just your midterm grade, so it's a little bit more important. So why is this? What does it mean? Why does it matter? So Google really makes it trivial to intercept their surveillance traffic. Again, the government is getting some benefit, or they wouldn't allow it. And the other thing we found too is when Bo was looking, there's some websites from the central government, they're kind of guides to local governments, like, so you're doing like your local government website. Make sure you have a link to the phone number, Make sure you use Google Analytics, it's super cool. So this is something that, like, not in a, I would say kind of like scary way, but also in a mundane way, like, Google Analytics is helpful, go for it. Yeah, so I would say they're actually best friends in the end. I wrote a Guardian op-ed with Maria Repnikova. If you want to read that, we kind of get more into the issue. But this project I talked about, this is me and Bo Mai. There's my address, there's Bo's. Again, you can try the code for yourself. The way it works is it's a little tricky to install if you haven't done command line stuff before. But after that, you just make a list of web pages you want to scan, drop it in there, it scans them, and you get a bunch of CSVs and stuff. You can open in Excel, make charts. So I made it for people to use, and it's there, and I will help you set it up if you want to use it. That's about it. I will answer a question.
Questions, comments? Fears, anxieties?
Yeah, this goes along with fears and anxieties. So I was in China about a year and a half ago, very briefly, and I was Skyping with one of my English students. I teach part-time, who's a Taiwanese diplomat. And we worked out an arrangement before. Nothing would be mentioned, no sensitive subjects, and VPN, of course. And all of a sudden, don't have any add-ons on your browser, so there's no digital fingerprint following you around. Maybe you're on Linux or whatever.
It can still be tracked. But.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder, if not this, so if we don't observe it here, how else might they be using a desktop or other ways to track people? Because as soon as I'm in a country where there seems to be a lot of internet presence, suddenly all of the websites load more slowly, and the Wi-Fi router detects two of the same IP address for my computer.
Yeah, so when you're using a VPN, it's probably going to get a little slower anyways. And yeah, I had the same experience when I was in China. My geolocation was mysteriously reported me at being some strange locations I wasn't at, so it's a little spooky. But I think the underlying story there really kind of gets not what was happening. It's the fact that living in right now I would say a closed society, but any society now, any society where you have a government and the internet, which is all of them, what happens is, I did a ton of IT and web development work before I started doing this. Shit breaks all the time. Stuff's just gonna break. Did your Skype call break because Skype was broken? 90% yes. But the fact that you know the government has its hand in something, the fact that you know that these systems exist, what was the most powerful policeman is the one in your mind, something like that. So once you start to get the idea in your head that people are watching what you're doing, they're manipulating the web and stuff like that, there's this huge range of daily random crap happening that's just gonna happen anyways. And I found if you overthink it, or maybe appropriately think it, kind of the way the system operates is it starts operating in your head on its own. So I think there's a certain level of people talk about self-censorship, right? Where you think you're gonna be censored, so you're gonna say something. I think there's also, I don't know what to call it yet, but kind of like a self-surveillance, like you attribute random crap to someone being directly involved in your life. I'll have to consult a psychologist to figure out what that's actually called, but yeah, I think, in all likelihood, was somebody jamming your signal or something, I wouldn't be surprised of that either. I'm not 100% sure if the encryption on Skype is known to be broken, but these people have a lot of money. And if you have enough money and enough computers, you'll eventually break most things. But yes, you're paranoid, but it's okay.
A sort of comment on your presentation. Your sort of main argument stated public-private partnership. The Chinese surveillance is sort of public-private partnership. It's not from what we think usually is not a traditional top-down approach, which is your main argument. But don't you think this Chinese surveillance is more or less, because the Chinese internet policy is more or less a character state policy. Because this partnership is come along with the Chinese government's pressure or cohesion on these private sectors. For example, giving the example of Tencent company, which you said you mentioned there's no clear kind of contact with Chinese government or direct relation with Chinese government. As far as I know, that the Tencent company is closely direct with relation with Chinese government, because the Ma Huajin is the main director, chief director of the Tencent company, which became 2013 become the member of the National People's Congress. This is the most powerful legislative body in China.
So
it's sort of this policy. If you don't follow or cooperate with the government, you get punishment in terms of not getting license or all this stuff. If you cooperate, not only you get license, but you get the reward or promotion within the Communist Party. So don't you think this is kind of
yeah, so I'll preface. Yeah, well, I'll preface by saying this aspect is more Bo's specialty than my own. The answer to that what we're looking at here isn't exactly what you're talking about. We're more looking at infrastructure, right? It's like who's laying down the pipes. So if you think in the real world about, like, let's say, what's the difference between police and a security guard, right? Like a security guard might be part of a company that has very close connections to the government, but they don't actually have a government badge on, they're a security guard, as opposed to a policeman who has a badge and there's a chain of command and it goes up to the government. So what we're looking at is we're trying to see, okay, from an infrastructure level, are these connections being made directly to things that we can say, okay, this is clearly the government in the same way that a policeman wearing a badge is clearly the government? Or are we saying, all right, well, we're not quite sure what's going on here, but we have a very good indication, knowing based on what goes on inside the company and the relationships between who runs the companies, like Tencent you were mentioning, behind closed doors have a very close relationship with the government, right? And the question between what is a government-owned and privately owned company are very nuanced and I think unanswered questions in many cases. So with that, you're totally correct. If Bo is here, what his current projects are looking at more is what we've seen is there's an emerging industry now, and this emerging industry is called scientific public opinion monitoring. So what's going on is the government does not internally have the types of resources needed to make sense of this type of data specifically. So what WebXray does, and other companies, and Bo has been learning a lot about these for his dissertation, what these companies do is they scientifically analyze public opinion by looking at this type of data collection. Again, we're at like infrastructure level. They're taking it, they're packaging it, and they're delivering it to the government. So I think if you look back, you know, to Maoist times or something, you always had this kind of idea that there's internal party publications and stuff like this, but those were internal. And now what you're seeing is the government is partnering with private sector and people who have developed technologies for selling stuff, and they're kind of turning this around and making a social management technique.
I think I am interested in your comment on somehow I think similar kind of research of Gary King that he was done web tracking.
Yeah.
And they found I think 8 categories of content, and they try to see what type of content is most likely to be blocked by the Chinese government.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing.
This is a Gary King.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Gary King. And it's really amazing. They actually analyzed like 3 million posts. It's some kind of work there. And they found out that exactly what you had with your student there, contents related to foreign affairs is like most likely to be blocked. So in your research, would you be able to kind of have some kind of connection with this 3%?
Yeah, so.
Track, like what it is about?
Well, so one thing kind of, it's interesting, a lot of, at least where I'm kind of coming from, and also Bo, who's not here, when we're looking at the literature, there's a tremendous amount of literature about censorship and blocking, but the thing with censorship is it has a partner, and the partner to censorship is surveillance. You have to know what people are saying before you can stop them from saying it. And so we felt there had been a lot more focus on the censorship end than the surveillance end. So we're kind of trying to balance the picture out a bit. So in terms of that, this paper, we're not getting into those questions. I mean, I think it is definitely pretty interesting. And I mean, I think that from the King paper, so what they found in this paper is they had looked at a bunch of different keywords to see what was censored. And the ones that were actually censored wasn't just people complaining like, the government sucks. It was people who are like, let's go meet at 4 o'clock tomorrow in front of City Hall and yell the government sucks. That stuff was blocked, but there's this, it's kind of like a pot boiling is usually the metaphor. Like there's a decent amount of criticism of the government that is not censored and kind of passes through. And that, how that does fit into this research is the reason you kind of want to collect all this stuff is it's very helpful to know what people are thinking, and you can be much more responsive. So in some ways you can say that makes the government a very good government that listens to its people and responds very quickly. You can also say, well, it also means maybe the government's not very good because of deep changes. It makes cosmetic changes all the time while not having, you know, a deeper thing. But I don't want to get into the future of the CCP at the moment. So.
Do you know of similar research being done in other closed societies like Iran or
there is like one paper that's out, maybe a couple if I haven't seen them all, but I'm working, right now I am working with somebody on a Middle East project where we're actually looking at correlations between different countries, so we can actually kind of like view the kind of similarities of data flows. So we're doing that in the Middle East, and I was planning on doing something similar and looking at like Soviet peripheral states and trying to figure out different ideas with data flows there. But yeah, there's scant comparative work. Most of the research in this area comes straight from computer science, so there's a very deep fixation with the technical part. And I think you saw from this presentation, I like to start with the geeky part, but it has to mean something bigger. So one of the problems with computer science literature is the interdisciplinary part, or different types of computer scientists. It's rare they bring in other people. So yeah, so I'm trying to do more work there, but there's not enough.
So just to make it clear for all the lay people in the audience, including myself, there's not a significant difference between the way that this kind of surveillance is done in China and in the West, right? The bulk of it is outsourced to private companies, and then there's some sort of secret relationship between a private company and the government, right?
Most likely.
Well, we know that there's a secret relationship in the West, but we assume that there's the same kind of relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the idea is the web grew and spread really quickly, and companies figured out really fast how to make all these surveillance mechanisms. Government usually trails behind companies in many ways, especially when it comes to making money, because it's not what their primary remit is. But you have to think, if you're a government and you're like, okay, well, we got to figure out how to track this stuff, and you're like, whoa, they already figured it out. Show us your stuff. That's way easier than like, they figured it out. All right, get 50 guys, copy their code. We need 1,000 servers. So yeah, I think this stuff kind of like came into being on its own. And a lot, I mean, the other thing too is a lot of the, less so now, but over the past couple decades, a lot of the stuff in China is taking a lot of ideas from Silicon Valley and recontextualizing them. So the same things that were helping the NSA, it is going to happen on the other side of the Pacific also.
Could you say a little bit more, you mentioned this kind of, not divide, but how do you balance, I think was the word you used, between censorship and surveillance, and in terms of the motivation of our projection of the motivation of the Chinese government for engagement in this. Can you say a little bit more about this? Because we hear more stories about, stuff that's blocked and the kind of direct content blocking and filtering that takes place. We know about mass surveillance on a more global scale, more from the Snowden revelations, but can you say a little bit more about what you meant by seeing those two together but distinct?
Yeah, so censorship, it serves one purpose. It's to stop people talking about something. But there's another value to someone talking about something. That value is you can surveil them, and you can say, make a list of who these people are, who they're talking about. And if you balance the risk between enough people talking about something truly bad that it's unmanageable, or keeping it manageable, it's a great way to keep tabs on people. So definitely don't want to speculate on all the details of what happened in France, but I think the reason they were able to round up whatever within the next 24 hours, they said they arrested like 150 people, they already knew who all of them were because they had been surveilling them. And a lot of that surveillance was probably happening on an ongoing basis. And then what it lets you do, and this is another paper I've been working on, which I call connective surveillance. And I think part of the point of this type of surveillance too is that you can, over time, you can see how social relationships evolve and are made, right? And some of these are made around topic issues. Some of these topics are violent, which you know way more than me about. So as these things kind of happen, it happens over time. But if you're recording it without directly intervening until you need to, until you know there's something's about to happen, there's going to be a violent act, there's going to be a protest, something like that, that gives you a great way to create a whole map of all the people who, when you're ready, you go arrest all of them. And it's not like knock on a door, get the first guy till he tells you someone's name. It's, okay, hit the database, all right, we got all these guys, they're 2 hops away from all the people who said this, go get all of them right now. And I think that's probably what we just seen the past couple days. You don't arrest that many people in a sequence of, so where's your buddy? Okay, we'll go to his house. So I think that's more the law enforcement model that's going to be everywhere, and there's always a benefit to law enforcement to let people talk about stuff to a certain degree. And any government knows who the activists are in their country. They don't just go arrest them every day. They kind of want to know the wider networks. So yeah, great time to be live. Any other questions? Okay, cool.